Okay, so recently I picked up the OnePlus 12 for the insane specs, for the cameras, for the battery, for the charging. And despite some of the GigaChad specs, I noticed some quite depressing issues, especially after having the Pixel 8 Pro, which had very bad heating issues. And Google, please fix the Tensor chip or just give us Snapdragon. And before you ask, yes, this is my mic, this is the Blue Snowball, and I am recording with my phone, so I can't really show you, but I had it in the intro, and I had a OnePlus 8 Pro. So the first issue I have is when you're shooting something in low light, and you're zooming in, and you get into that 3x zone, it doesn't switch over to the telephoto lens because the phone thinks that you're going to have better quality with the main sensor cropped in, but sometimes I know what I'm doing. I do want the telephoto sensor, so OnePlus, just let me have the option to change the lenses when I want to. Just let me cook. And then the second issue is when you take a photo with OnePlus, you don't have an option to save JPEG and DNG, like which is RAW. You only have the option to do one or the other, so you'll go to the master mode, click RAW, and then you can take the RAW photo. But if you want both, you can't really do that. And on a Pixel phone, you do have this option, so you'll take the photo, it gives you two photos, one that's completely processed and one as DNG RAW. And at any point, you can go down to your library, you know, the photo you took like 6 centuries ago, and you can actually edit the photo. And on the OnePlus, I feel like I'm slightly stressed because I feel like every photo I have to take both manually and in RAW, and then go back and edit it if I want to. Speaking of RAW, the issue is that you can't take the full 48 megapixel RAW photos. Instead, you're actually limited to the Pixel Bin 12 megapixel. And on the Pixel 8 Pro, you can do that. You can take the full 50 megapixel RAW photos. And I feel like OnePlus does this because the 50 megapixels just kind of suck. So if you look at the comparison, there isn't actually much difference between 50 megapixel and 12 megapixel. It seems like the only difference is the fact that you can zoom in a little bit more in your gallery, but there isn't actually any more detail. And that extra processing time that you get from the shutter is just not worth it. I'm not even surprised it's hidden away in the more section, because it's not really worth being a toggle at the top of the main camera mode. It's not really something you should be using. Okay, so the night mode, I feel like the phone is really good at night mode. However, sometimes it confuses me because when you take a photo, it takes like 1 or 2 seconds to process the photo, but then the ISO is like 5,000 or 10,000. To be fair to OnePlus, some of the photos come out so clean, it actually makes no sense. You can actually trick the phone into using a tripod mode if you hold it super still, and then it triggers this like 8 or 9 second shutter speed, which is mostly processing, because if you check, it's more like a 1.3 second shutter speed. But the photos come out genuinely more detailed, and that raises the question, like, why is there no middle ground, you know, something like what the Pixel does, where you can do a handheld shot and it's about 5 seconds and you get like a really clean looking shot. That way you don't have to raise the ISO to like 5,000, you know, you can keep it at like 2,000 and have like a half a second shutter speed, because normally it's like 1/15 and then a 10,000 ISO, which is not really balanced. Okay, this one isn't so important, but there's no 4K 120 FPS option. There's 720p 480 and 1080p 240. So where is 4K 120? I'm pretty sure Sony and Samsung already do it, and OnePlus has literally the fastest CPU, so I feel like the feature has just been completely neglected. So if you go to the more section, there's this thing called film mode, and in the film mode you can change the manual settings like ISO, shutter speed, but there's no way to change the resolution or the frame rate. Like, yes, in this mode you can change the lenses and it will force to use that lens, but that's about it. And you also get this stabilization toggle, which if you turn it off, you disable the electronic stabilization, which is terrible on a stock camera. But then apart from that, it's almost the same as a stock camera app. You even get the same bitrate. And then you're locked to this 21:9 aspect ratio, which I didn't even ask for. Maybe I want 4:3 and incorporate it myself. So it's just a weird app. I feel like if you want the pro mode, just download an app and call it a day. Speaking of third-party camera apps, the apps don't let you use the telephoto camera. This is surprising, because if you get something like Filmic Pro, you can't use the telephoto. If you want to shoot raw with motion cam, can't use a telephoto. And I feel like for a lot of filmmakers, that's a deal breaker, especially for me, because I want to use this phone to film some stuff, like more professionally, more than casual, which means I have to use my old and abused OnePlus 8 Pro, which needs to retire. So this one is a bit shocking, but the 8K kind of sucks. And remember when I said that the high res mode kind of sucks? Well, I feel like the same thing is happening here. So in 8K, you're using 32 megapixels or 32 million pixels, and I feel like there's just too many of them. The phone doesn't really know what to do with those pixels, and you end up with a lower quality video. It just looks a bit over sharpened and muddy and processed and a bit fake looking. This is especially apparent in low light because I feel like the phone just gets confused with all the pixels, and also you get this lower quality and dimmer looking video, so in low light it's just definitely not worth using. And also, if you open the phone's gallery, the video that's in 8K looks a bit fuzzy, almost like a TV static, mosaic, whatever it's called, but it just looks strange. I feel like it's because it's an 8K video that's showing on a 1440p screen that doesn't have any like downscaling or anything. It just looks really strange.